guys ready to jump in? How was week 1 of Family Survival Guide? How was week 1 of Family Survival Guide? I do want to take just a moment quickly to go over just a few points. If you weren't here last week, I just want to catch you up in a few areas. Listen, with the heart of this series and the heart of last week, I want you to be encouraged that God doesn't want us just to survive as a family. He wants us to thrive, okay? This world, this culture right now needs you individually and you as a family to be a lighthouse. They need the Christian community to not just be in survival mode. Listen, I don't care what else is going on. We need to flip the switch in our own understanding, and we need to begin to thrive. Because God didn't create a people just to survive and to wander, right? Wander around in the desert. He created us to thrive in the promised land. Do you believe that? Do you believe that? Right? I believe that. I know that not everything in my life is going to be sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns, right? In fact, the more often than not, when I find myself being obedient to God, that's sometimes when life can punch you in the stomach, right? But I want to encourage you in those areas. And so last week, we talked about a few things that would help us to thrive, not just survive, right? The first one is we have to make the decision, right? You and I challenged every single person in this place, you have to make the decision individually. You have to make the decision, I'm going to follow Jesus, right? There's no greater decision in your life. It's not a job. It's not who you're going to marry. It's not any decision in your life. The greatest decision you will ever have to make is, I'm going to walk and I'm going to step into a relationship with Jesus. Would you agree? All right, we have to make that decision. The second thing is we have to set the direction in our life. And we read these in scriptures, and you can go back and read those, right? But God told Joshua that I'm going to give every single place where your foot steps. One thing I love about the direction is God has already given us the direction. He's already laid a path out for us, and all we have to do is walk in obedience, right? We have to understand His word and what He's telling us, and we have to walk in obedience. And the third thing that we were challenged in is to make a declaration, right? We declare this thing over our family. As for me and my house, we are going to serve the Lord, right? I don't care if my kids are young, if my kids are old, what our family situation is. It's a faith declaration that me and my family, we are going to serve the Lord. And I left you with a challenge for every single person to be a Joshua. Be a Joshua. You are a conqueror, right? I'm reminding that you do need to fight for your future, right? This isn't a physical fight, right? For your future, for your family's future. This is a spiritual fight that we all must undertake. That we need to understand that we are Joshuas and we need to go out and conquer the land. Joshua thrived. He didn't just survive. He didn't stay and complain and wander. But today, I want to talk about thinking generationally. And this is the title of the message for those of you who are taking notes. Think generationally. Can we have just a little bit of fun in here real quick? I want to, with a show of hands, I want to see what generation you are. What generations do we have represented here this morning? Do we have any boomers in here? You boomers should be proud, right? Yeah. Yeah, we've got a few boomers in the middle, okay? What about Generation X? This is 65 to 80. Any Xers we have in here? Come on, raise it proud. Yes. Nobody notices you anymore. All right, what about, this is my generation. What about the millennials? We have any millennials in here, 81 to 96, right? Yeah, I'm proud of our generation. You say what you want about the millennials. I'm proud of who we are. Lots to say about it. Yeah. Yeah, we'll have a conversation afterwards about that. What about the Generation Z, the 97 to 2012? Anybody, any Zs we have in here? Okay, good. Now, this is the last one. I don't know if we'll have any of these. Any Alpha? Any Generation Alpha in here? What a silly name. Generation Alpha. There's one over there. We got an Alpha over there. A generation, when I talk about a generation today, a generation is anybody that is younger than you. And I want us today to think generationally. And that I want us to think, to be more specific, I want you to think 3 generations. So if I use this as an example for me, who I am concerned about in teaching and growing and empowering, I'm worried about my generation, the millennials, right? I'm worried about Generation Z, and I'm worried about Generation Alpha. For me and my family, when I think generationally, and you'll probably think the same way for those of you who have kids, I think about my boys automatically, right? And someday my grandkids, and I probably won't live long enough to see my great-grandkids. So I think 3 generations, okay? Our desire and our goal as parents, and I bet they're the same as you, is to leave our children in a better place than what we had, right? So we're saving, we're spending in some areas to grab a hold of things and to leave our children not just junk, not just bills, not just a payment, but we want to put them in a position, our 3 boys, to where when we do pass, there is something given to them. And the same context, the same heart is spiritually. It is our responsibility and our obligation to raise and to leave our boys with a spiritual inheritance. Listen, I can tell my boys and I can tell my grandkids this, as long as I'm alive, I'm going to fight for the spiritual well-being of my kids and my grandkids. Right? And I know some of you with younger kids, you don't quite understand what that looks like yet, right? But our responsibility is, as long as we're breathing, I don't care how old my kids are, how old my grandkids are, it's our responsibility to fight for the spiritual well-being of our children. But also, it's our responsibility to fight for the spiritual well-being of the generation below us, right? Of the Gen Zs and the millennials and the alphas. So it expands beyond all of that. They're not the church of the future, right? They are the church. They are the church right now. And so it's our responsibility, millennials, boomers, Xers, I know nobody's paying attention to you. It's our responsibility to empower this next generation spiritually and to equip them and to pour into them. And so the passage that we've been reading, and I'm going to read again this morning, is out of Joshua, and it's Joshua chapter 24, and it's 13 through 15. It's the Amplified version. It reads this: I gave you a land. This is God speaking through Joshua, right? They have already gotten into the promised land, and they've conquered. They're conquering the promised land, right? The walls of Jericho have come down, and this is as they're in that land, this is what Joshua is declaring to the people. He says, I gave you a land for which you did not labor, and cities which you did not build, and you live in them. You eat from the vineyards and olive groves which you did not plant. Now, therefore, fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in truth. Remove the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the Euphrates River in Egypt, and serve the Lord. If it is unacceptable in your sight to serve the Lord, choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you live. And the famous line, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. I think we can learn two things from this passage, many things, but Joshua made two choices to strengthen the next generation. And I think these are two choices that we have to make. Wherever we are, whether we have a family, whether we don't have a family, we have these two choices to make. Are you ready for the first one? Yes. Okay. One person. Thanks, Johnny. Choose who you let influence you. Choose who you let influence you. Now, this is for all ages. This isn't just for teenagers. You know, sometimes I think, you know, these Gen Zers, they're just, these Gen Alphas, they're just out there and they've got all these people influencing. Well, hold on, millennials, Gen Xers, right? This is for us as well. Because we too are being influenced or can be influenced. So I think this point is for every single person. I want us to understand too that there's strength in letting people go who aren't making you better. There's strength in letting people go who aren't making you better. You will not grow if you don't go. You're not growing if you're not going. Joshua was to conquer all of the promised land, not just get in the gates and set up shop. He was to conquer the entire promised land. There's strength in letting people go who aren't making you better. And I think this is a hard topic to receive. So I want you to understand the heart of where I'm coming from on this. Joshua didn't let the people influence who he was, right? He went out and he brought back the good report. At that point, he buried, when he was reading this passage in Joshua chapter 24, he buried those people's parents, right? He knew those people, and he knew the report that they give, and he didn't allow them to influence them. So I want to encourage you in your walk, make people earn your influence. When you choose to serve the Lord, you will let go of people who are choosing not to serve him. I'm going to say that one more time. When you choose to serve the Lord, you will let go of people who are choosing not to serve him. And so this is what I don't want you to do, right? I don't want you to get home and make a list of people and call Susie and Billy and say, listen, you're off the list, right? I was at church today. This message was talking just about you. You're a bad influence in my life. You got to go. That's not what I'm telling you to do. I'm asking us to be challenged and to evaluate the people, the circle in our lives. You are being influenced if you even if you don't think you're being influenced by the people around you. You're either being influenced in a godly way or you're being influenced in an ungodly way. But you are being influenced by those around you. He said, remove the gods which your fathers served. I don't know if you know this or not, but not everyone serves God. Right? Capital G. Not everyone, and I know where we live. I know we're in the Bible Belt. If that still exists, I don't know, right? But not everybody in this town and the people that you come in contact with, they don't all serve God. In fact, if they're not serving God, the reality of it is they're serving the gods of this world. And it would be easy for me to sit up here and just to make a list of all the gods of the world, right? The money, we serve work. And then I've said this before, and I think it's the biggest thing we serve that is getting in the way of our relationship with God, and that's we serve ourselves. we just serve ourselves. It's a me culture and a me generation. And I'm just going to tell you, if you're married and you're serving yourself, you're in for a long marriage, right? Because my responsibility that we're told in Ephesians 5 is to serve my wife, right? As I follow Christ, I'm to serve my wife, and she's to serve me as well. So we serve one another. And if you let those who don't serve God influence you, you will eventually serve the gods of this world. And if you think that's a false statement, we can simply open up the Old Testament. We can see the story of the Israelites. God told them to completely wipe this culture out because if they didn't, they would influence who they are. And the Israelites got in trouble when they allowed those people into their camps because they would influence who they were. They would bring their gods into the camp. And God knew that, right? An example for me in my life, spiritually, I'm never going to let somebody influence my life that doesn't have a relationship with God. There's people, I love to read, I love to listen to people who have a great success in business, who have great careers in their area, professionals in their areas, coaches, all those areas. I love to hear that, and I'll sit and listen, and you can give me tidbits and information about your specialty, and I'll soak all those things up. But if you don't have a spiritual walk with God, you will not give me any direction in my life spiritually, right? You will not have any influence in my life spiritually. Joshua realized also that he couldn't make people serve God. He said, choose this day whom you will serve. There's people in our lives that we so desperately want them to serve the Lord. My heart, as I look out in this room, my heart is for every single person, however old you are. I want you to serve the Lord. I want you to wholeheartedly serve the Lord. That's what I want for you. But I can't twist your arm. I'm not up here as a used car salesman selling Jesus every week. That's just not what I'm doing, right? I can't make you. And it was the same with Joshua, right? He gave them the opportunity. He said, choose for yourselves who you are going to serve, because he knew the pattern of the people. And guess what the Israelites stumbled right back into not too long after this? Serving the gods of this world. We can't make people serve the Lord. It's their choice to serve them. Jesus says in John 6, that many turned away from him. It says that many of his disciples went back and walked with him, walked with Jesus no more. Many disciples, many people turned their back on Jesus because his sayings, his beliefs, who he was tough. You know? Wouldn't it be hard to follow somebody who said, eat my flesh, drink my blood? Would that maybe put up a red flag for anybody else? Red flag, right? But what Jesus was really doing, right? And these are what we'll find ourselves doing as well. Jesus was drawing a line in the sand, right? He was saying, this is who I am. This is what I believe. This is how I'm going to live my life. And he looked at his 12 and he said, you know what? You should probably go too. That's what he said. Or do you guys want to leave too? Right? And he didn't say, no, listen, wait, I'm sorry. I don't mean that. You can dabble in this and still serve me. That's not what he said. He said, this is who I am. These are my beliefs. And some people will choose not to follow you. I'm just going to bring a word of encouragement to you, okay? As encouraging as this sounds. On Christian foundation, on principles, there will be people around you that will not accept those teachings, right? And more as the day draws near. They will not accept those things. But we are called to stand firm in our faith. What about leaving the 99 and telling the world about Jesus, right? That this sounds so harsh that I can't have friends in my life who aren't Christians, that maybe they don't follow God. Maybe they're not a great influence in my life. What about those, Justin? What about the 99? What about the people who still need to hear about Jesus? Listen, the mandate is still the same, right? The mandate is still preach the gospel to the whole world. Preach it to the whole world. Anybody that you see that they don't know God and you can somehow help that situation. Do that, but be careful who influences who you are. Does that make sense? And I want to encourage you as parents and really as anyone, any person, be careful who's speaking into your life, or your voice might start to sound like theirs. If I'm going to bring this back to think 3, generationally, right? Be careful who is speaking into your life, who is influencing you, because your voice might start to sound a lot like theirs. And then as you speak into your children's life, right? There's one voice that should be louder than anybody else's voice in your life. I hope and pray that I am not the loudest voice in your life spiritually every week. The loudest voice in your life should be Jesus. Come on, right? The loudest voice in your life should not be a book, should not be a podcast, should not be a boomer, should not be a Zer, Xer, anybody. The loudest voice in your life should be that of Jesus. Is he influencing your life? So you need to choose who you will let influence you. Are you still with me? Yeah. All right. I've just got 30 more minutes. That's not true. Football's at 12. I can't do that. Second one is this. This is my last point, right? Choose who influences you. The second one is this. choose your legacy. I think if we can look at this passage, we can learn two things. Joshua is giving us two things that you're going to have to make the choice. Choose who influences you, but also choose your legacy. He says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. At that point, Joshua is choosing his legacy. Really, earlier on in his life, he was choosing his legacy as well, because he chose to bring back a good report, right? When others saw the giants, he saw the grapes. So really, at that point, he was choosing his legacy. But I want to encourage you that you do, in fact, have the power to leave a legacy. But you're going to have the courage to stand when others choose to sit. Right? Parents, young people, you do have the power to change your legacy and to impact a generation. But you're going to have to choose to stand when other people are choosing to sit. And the best way that you can choose to stand is when you make the decision that I'm going to follow the Lord, right? I'm going to follow Jesus. And it's not only going to impact me, it's going to impact my spouse, it's going to impact my kids, and you're darn sure it's going to impact my grandkids, right? Because I heard people love their grandkids more than they love their kids, right? It not only affects you, but it affects those around you. We need to think generationally. You know, you will not be remembered by your stuff. You will not be remembered by your accomplishments. And I've joked about this before. You know, after my funeral, in my will is going to be, after my funeral's over, I'm going to have just a huge dump truck come up to the house, and my boys are just going to throw all my stuff away. Right? I don't want them to. There's nothing good worth it. They're just going to throw it all away. Right? Because I won't be remembered in my stuff. My heart is that when I'm not here, you'll remember me through my 3 boys, right? You'll remember me through my wife. You can pick up my Bible, you can pick up my journals, and that's how you can know who I am, right? And maybe even I'll be remembered through the people that I've impacted in my life. But that's how people are going to remember you. It's the generation that's below you, the generations that are below you. You know, when I was younger and our kids were younger, I enjoyed coaching them. Several things that I enjoyed doing with them, but one of the things I enjoyed was coaching them in baseball. Right? We were never good. Right? If you've ever watched the Bad News Bears, that's just the teams that we had. Right? Every single year, that's how it was. And so I knew what I was getting myself into. And honestly, I never coached to win games. One of the reasons that I coached was to have a positive impact on those boys, right? And some of those boys I'm still friends with to this day, right? There was a why behind the what of what I was doing, right? I can still remember, do they still do Watchdog Dads at school? Watchdog, you guys don't even know what that is, apparently. Apparently they don't do it anymore. Well, they used to do Watchdog Dads, right? And dads every single day would sign up. They would go to the school. You know, I would sit in class. I think it was Aiden who was all about me coming to do a Watchdog Dad, right? So I'd go to school with them, and I'd sit in their class, and I'd learn what third graders were learning, and we would go to the playground, and we would play kickball, you know, and I was a legend on that kickball field, right? You would have all the fun. You would buy pizzas, and you would bring in. You just have all these memories, right, with all of these kids, right? I was teaching my boys something, right? I had other things I could have done. I could have went to work and done other things. But I was teaching Aiden that day, hey, it's important to give back to those who have made an impact in your life. One of the reasons why I pastor, right, is not that God has called us to do this, but also I want my boys to understand that when God asks you to do something, you do it. Right? Like, it looks really challenging. And it has been challenging in its moments, right? But it's also very rewarding. I want them to understand that when God asks you to do something, that you can do it. I want them to understand how much I love their mom, right? Even to the point of being weird, right? In front of them and kissing her and loving on her and just being as weird as I possibly can in front of them, right? It is to embarrass them, but also, I want them to know I love your mom, right? I love your mom, and I will make it weird, you know? I want them to know why we work so hard. Do you see what I'm getting at, right? I want them to understand some of the things. For those of you who have a business, you own a business, right? You want your kids to say, hey, listen, I did it. If I can do it, you can do it, right? I started a business. Yeah, it was really hard and it's challenging. But if you want to pass those things on to your kids, just like we want to pass on spiritual principles to our kids, right? You know, we've been having Switch at our house, and we wanted to have it at a house. We wanted to do that, right? But also, one of the things I want my boy and for other people to understand as well, that it's okay to have people over to your house. I thought maybe somebody would say, yeah, it's okay to have people over there. Right? I want them to understand, yeah, this is your space. I get it. I love my space too. But it's also okay to have people over to your house. Come on, right? I don't care. I know you have kids. I know your house isn't going to be clean. People don't care about that stuff. What I want my kids, and I want this next generation to understand, is just like we did it, you can do it. You can do those things. If God says you can do it, then go do it. I'll close with this. Talk about God with your kids. Deuteronomy 6:6-9 says, and you must commit yourselves. This is the most important verse. I don't have time to jump into it. Verse 6. You must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I'm giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you're at home, when you're on the road, when you're going to bed, when you're getting up. Tie them on your hands. Wear them on your forehead as reminders. Write them on the doorpost of your house and your gates. Talk about God with your kids. Our kids right now, we talk about all kinds of things. Fantasy football, all kinds of things. We can't forget to have conversations about God with our kids, because we are where we are because of God. We also understand in Proverbs 22:6 that if we train up a child in the way he should go, when he is old, he will not depart from it. I made a commitment long ago to God. These are my boys, right? These are my boys. I'm giving them to you in faith, saying that one day, right, I'm training up my boys the best of my ability, and that one day, even if they wander off and do their own thing, that one day, like a good father, you're going to bring them back in. Because I trained up my child in the way he was supposed to go. And your word says that he won't depart from it. I'm believing those things. The first 18 years of a person's life is so important. 80% come to Christ under the age of 30, right? 80% of Christ come to Christ under the age of 30. The next, thinking generationally matters. This isn't just about a family. This is about you personally as well. Think about the generations below you. They need us, right? They need us to set the spiritual environment and the atmosphere. They need to know that He's worth it. And if we're doing it, you can do it too. And I'm going to help you. I'm going to walk alongside you. I'm going to show you who God is. I'll close with a story. So the other week I was at work, and it just happened to be in an environment where somebody had to be with us walking around this facility. And usually I don't like that kind of stuff because I have I feel like obligated. I have to talk to them, and that's just not really what I want to do sometimes. So this guy's walking to me, and he's an older guy. I'm going to put him in the boomer. He looked like a boomer, right? That's all I'm going to say. Not that boomers have a look. You just look like a boomer, right? So I love boomers. And I knew automatically when I seen him, I was like, this guy's going to be good. Because if you hang around a boomer long enough, they've got some stories, right? They've been through some things. So I'm walking with him, and usually I don't tell people I'm a pastor. I very rarely tell people that because it changes how they act around me, so I don't. But we got to walking with him, and I can just tell there was something different about this guy, and I told him that I was a pastor, and our whole conversation changed to just a spiritual conversation. He had some land, and he was a hard worker, and we got to talking about a lot of things. And I've told this story before, but I got to talking about my maple trees in the backyard. I've got 3 maple trees, 1 for each boy, and 2 of them have died. And it's just been, I worry about these maple trees, right? And I'm telling him this story. I said, man, I'm buying these maple trees from the nursery, and they're, already a couple years old, and I don't understand. We're wrapping them in. I don't understand why these maple trees aren't living. And the whole time I'm telling him this story, he's got this just smirk on his face. And he looks at me afterwards, and with the smirk on his face, he says, "You're doing it all wrong." He goes, "You're doing it all wrong." I said, "Well, what am I doing wrong?" He said, "What you need to go is you need to go to a cemetery or a park, and you need to find a bunch of maple trees." They're the ones with the little whistle things, right? The airplanes, right? Is that right? Helicopters? He said, go to the park, go to a cemetery where there's lots of maple trees. He said, just load up on these seeds. Put them in at hundreds, load them up. He said, just put one in a pot, put a seed in a pot. He said, you don't have to bury it. God didn't intend it to be buried. He said, just put it on top. Maybe put a little something just over, just keep it in there and water it, and it'll grow. See, he said, you're trying to grow something. You're not waiting for the growth process. See, what I was doing is I was just buying a mature tree because all I saw, I just wanted color in my yard. I wanted immediate color in my yard. And he was doing it all wrong. And what I learned from that conversation is you have to start with a seed, right? You got to start with a seed. And I find myself rushing things in life. I want it to be fruitful. I want it to be already there. And through his simple words of, you're doing it all wrong, you got to start with a seed. I want to encourage you this morning, wherever you are in your walk with God, wherever you are generationally, kids, no kids, wherever you are. Can I just encourage you this morning? Just start with a seed. Just one seed. Take that seed. You don't have to bury it too deep, right? Take the time and watch that thing grow, right? Take the time with your kids and watch them grow. Take that seed and just pray for it. Don't get in a hurry. Don't get in a rush. I don't care if your kids are older or where they are or where you are in your journey. Take the time. think generationally. Think who is influencing you, right? Think about the legacy that you're leaving. You have time. God has time to work in your life.